Hey, well, hello and welcome to Scam Chat Wednesdays 2025. My name is Strat Maloma with AARP California, where I also serve as the lead for the AARP Fraud Watch Network, which is a free fraud prevention and education resource that's available to anyone. Our network is all about helping communities spot and avoid frauds and scams through information, education, resources, and events like this. Thank you for joining us for the second in a series of weekly fraud prevention and education conversations that we're hosting throughout August with our good friends at the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. I hope you will join our conversations as always and help us make it an interactive one by sharing your stories, your comments, and by asking your questions. And as always, we set aside time at the end of the presentations that you'll see today to answer your questions. Today, we're going to be talking about identity theft. How does it work? How can we spot it? How can we avoid it? What to do if it happens? But before I introduce our guest for today's conversation, I just want to share a few housekeeping things to help us have a really great conversation. For audio purposes, we ask please keep yourself on mute until you are invited to come on and ask your question. To ask questions, simply type your question in chat, or when we get to our Q&A session, please use the raise your hand feature. If you're not comfortable coming on live to ask your question, happy to do so for you. And then lastly, I do want to share that today you're going to hear from the California Privacy Protection Agency as well as the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. However, the opinions shared by our presenters are those of our presenters. So just want to make that clear and may not necessarily represent those of their agencies. The information that we're sharing is strictly for educational and information purposes only. Folks, the issue that we're talking about today, identity theft, is really a challenging one. It's becoming increasingly more, we're seeing more of it, and it can be very devastating. Folks can steal your identity and open fake accounts. They can commit fraud in your name and really leave us in a tight mess in terms of trying to clear our names. So it can also make us look like the scammers. So we want to understand this issue a little bit more. So we have some really great guests to help us understand the issue a bit more. I want to now welcome our first guest to help us understand what identity theft is all about, what they're doing with it, and how they can help us stay protected from it. Is like to introduce Q Lee from the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. Welcome, Q.
Thank you, Strat.
Great. Q, can for the benefit of our audience, can you introduce yourself, your work, and your agency? Tell our audience a little bit of who you are and what your agency does, and some of your background, please.
Yeah, of course. So hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Cooley. I'm the Targeted Outreach Director for the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, also known as the DFPI. So I lead a team of outreach specialists. We go out there, we do free presentations just like this, in person, virtually, to provide information to scam awareness, fraud prevention information, as well as financial education to consumers all across the state of California. And my department, the California DFPI, we are the state's financial regulator. We license and regulate a number of financial products and services throughout the state of California. Our purpose is to maintain a fair, healthy, and trusted financial marketplace for all Californians. And again, I talked about providing free presentations to basically anyone and everyone in all communities. Again, trying to inform consumers, educate them, empower them, and prevent them from falling prey to scams and fraud.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Q. Really appreciate the work that you do and also the work that the DFPI do. I had the pleasure of working with a number of your colleagues, so great that you're here. Um, I have a couple of questions for you before we meet our next guest and then before we go to our audience questions. So, can you tell us, give us a sense of what are some of the most common ways that identity thieves gain access to our personal information? And what are some of the things that we can do to help protect ourselves from identity theft?
Yeah, By far the largest way scammers and identity thieves are collecting your information is through imposter and phishing scams. So that's where they are posing as anyone you may know, or even an agency, right? They might be posing as Medicare or Social Security Administration or the IRS, and they're asking for your personal or financial information, and they might be sending you emails or messages through social media, or text messages. Again, that's kind of the biggest way that identity thieves are contacting you and trying to fool you to get your information. There's also data breaches, right? Where you might be a part of some organization, whether you're a member or you're a client, and they end up being a victim of a data breach and your information is out there. There's also physical theft and mail theft. So physical theft is, for instance, having your wallet, losing it or having it stolen. And then, of course, mail theft is where you have mail in a mailbox or a community mailbox, and it gets attacked, and then the mail thieves steal all the mail there. They might be trying to collect your, again, personal and identifying information. There's also skimming devices, right? Those are the small electronic devices that scammers put over legitimate payment processing devices, and they may collect a lot of your data as well. Unsecured Wi-Fi is another big way that identity thieves steal your identity. If you go to a lot of internet cafes or even hotels and you're logging into unsecured or open Wi-Fi, you're allowing anyone to access your computer. So be very careful of that. Another thing is through just oversharing information, right? If you're publishing a lot of information on social media, or maybe you're sharing personal emails with a lot of personal information with your friends and family, and their accounts get hacked. And that method where identities are stealing your information is through personal connections, right? So your best friend, maybe a family member, loses their phone, and their phone, it gets hacked into, and now they have all your connected information. Maybe a friend or family has their social media account or their email accounts hacked into, and if you've been sharing your personal or financial information through those accounts, now those identity thieves have that information. And then finally, data brokers. A lot of your data, if you allow it, is out there for purchase. And we know that scammers and identity thieves purchase your data through data brokers.
Yeah, those are a lot of a lot of places that we really have to be vigilant about, because there's a lot of ways that scammers are looking to steal our identity. Thank you for sharing those. So let me ask, from your outreach work, can you identify, or are you seeing any communities being more vulnerable than the other when it comes to identity theft? And then what are some of the factors that you think might contribute to making them more vulnerable to identity theft?
Yeah, so in my experience, non-English speaking communities and older adults and retirees are probably the most vulnerable communities to identity theft and these types of scams. This is because these communities are especially being targeted by scammers and identity thieves. Sometimes a language, social, or cultural barrier will give these identity thieves, criminals, the opportunity to exploit the communities. Additionally, these communities may have limited understanding of new technologies, which also gives the criminals those opportunities to exploit them. And finally, these scammers and identity thieves know that non-English speaking communities and older adults are less willing to report crimes because of fear and embarrassment. So a lot of different factors that make, again, older adults and non-English communities much, much more vulnerable.
Absolutely. I think fear, embarrassment, and secrecy are some factors that scammers take advantage of as they target their victims. So let's talk about things that folks can do to protect themselves. What are some of the things that I know you have the list here? Do you want to sort of walk us through some of the things that you're seeing that we can do to protect ourselves?
Yeah, of course. So, kind of the first one is just be vigilant of scams, especially older adults. Scammers are, again, talking about non-English speaking communities, and older adults. They're specifically being targeted by scammers and identity thieves because they believe them to be easier targets. And so you want to be ultra vigilant of these types of any kind of phishing scams, and individuals who are asking you for personal or financial information. You also don't want to click on any links and emails or messages that are sent to you, right? Even if seems like it's legitimate, you always want to go directly to the source to verify that information first. Limit the information you share on social media. Think about using a passphrase for family and friends. That's something I do. So, a passphrase is where if I'm talking to a family or friend or communicating with them and they start asking for personal or financial information, I bring the challenge word up and they have to give me the correct passphrase for us to continue that conversation. Also, shred your personal and financial documents, right? If you throw information away, throw your mail, correspondences away, you may have personal information there that identity thieves could take. Drop off any important mail to post office, right? Try to avoid those mail thieves. Use multi-factor authentication regularly, and regularly change or update your password if you can. Also, place a credit freeze on your credit. It's one of the easiest things that you could do. It takes time. You do have to go to each credit bureau and authenticate who you are. But after that, you put a credit freeze on your account, and not even you will be able to open up new accounts, take out a loan, get a new credit card in your name. You'll have to unfreeze it before you do that. So real easy to do. You also always want to check your financial accounts regularly. Make a habit of it, right? Doesn't have to be weekly, but at least monthly. Check those credit card statements, those bank statements. Make sure you don't see anything regularly, anything odd that's happening. And Bryce might talk a little more about this, but delete old and unused accounts. If you have any old social media accounts, streaming accounts, email accounts that you no longer use, those are highly vulnerable because it's not a matter of if those accounts will get hacked or become a victim of a data breach. It's more of a concept of when will it happen. So the best way to protect yourself is, again, to delete those unused online accounts.
Absolutely. Great information there. So let me ask you, as somebody working for AARP and concerned with older adults, are there any unique ways that identity theft affects older adults specifically? And it's not just older adults, this is anyone, but but as it relates to older adults, are there any unique ways that you're seeing?
Yeah. So older adults, and not just identity theft, but of course any kind of scam, they usually suffer higher financial losses, and it's such a bigger impact on those individuals. Especially again, older adults who've worked a lifetime to build wealth, acquire assets, save up, and then if a scammer comes in or they become a victim of identity theft and now their credit is ruined, or they lose a lot of money financially, it's harder for them to recover, right? So we see, or there's a lot of statistics that show that again, older adults have higher financial losses, and it's a bigger impact on their quality of life is after they become a victim. There's also specific forms of identity theft that target older adults. So things like Medicare and Social Security Administration scams. So again, you want to be hyper vigilant about anytime someone is knocking at your door or sending you a message or posing as um, the toll car toll company or IRS. You always want to go directly to the source to verify the information first.
Absolutely. I really like the advice about opening accounts, monitoring your information, your statements regularly to see what's happening. Because, I remember we used to get our bank statements every 28, 30 days or so. Having an electronic account, an online account, lets you see in real time what's happening with your account. So I really like that advice. Thank you very much. Um, Stick around because when we get to Q&A, I know we're going to have some more questions about this. I do want to now introduce our second guest for today's conversation from the California Private Protection Agency, Bryce Alvarez, as well as Nilofer Sheikh, to talk to us about identity theft. Bryce, welcome. Would you and Nilofer, would you mind introducing yourselves, the work that you do, and your agencies to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Strat, for having us here. My name is Bryce Avalos. I am the outreach manager with the California Privacy Protection Agency. And so I'm part of our public affairs, our external public affairs team, and I run our outreach program. Specifically, I am focused on reaching the communities that need privacy education the most. So that would be underserved communities or at-risk communities. And so that's why I'm here today to provide some privacy tips for older adults. And I'm here with my colleague Nilofer from our legal division. She's going to support me during our Q&A session today. Nilofer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks, Bryce. Hi, everyone. My name is Nilla Shake. I'm an attorney at the California Privacy Protection Agency. As part of my work for the agency, I advise on things like privacy regulations that address how businesses collect and use personal information of consumers like you. I'll pass it back to Bryce.
Thanks,
Thank
Nilofer.
you. Thank you both for being with us today. And I really look forward to the conversation, to some questions that they're going to come up around privacy. Folks, please feel free to post your questions in chat. But Bryce and Nilofer, let's get into some questions before we come to our audience questions. So I want to kick this off with a question for both of you. What are some practical steps that people can take to safeguard their personal data online, especially as they interact with things like websites, apps, and other online services? And I hope as you respond to this question, you also think of sharing with us the how digital privacy, how does that intersect with identity theft? You know, why is that so important when it comes to dealing with identity theft? So let me pass it on to you to respond to that. And I know I'm going to bring up your slides to help address that.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Data privacy intersects with identity theft. Well, to put it frankly, I mean, data privacy is all about having control over your personal information. And identity theft is what happens when the control over your personal information is stolen. Essentially, you lose control of it. Somebody else has taken control of it. Um, so that's how those two things interact. And the California Privacy Protection Agency, we're actually the only dedicated consumer privacy agency in the United States. So really proud to be part of this organization, and helps protects people's privacy in several ways. I'm part of our public affairs division, so I'm doing the outreach and teaching consumers about their privacy rights. Our legal division helps develop new regulations so that we're always on the forefront of privacy, protecting consumers' rights. We also have a policy and legislation division that works with the legislature to make sure that we're passing privacy-friendly legislation. So in those ways, we're helping protect your personal information, and through that, helping you prevent identity theft by allowing you to exercise greater control over it. And so, to your other question, what does that mean in a practical sense, right? Like as an everyday Californian, what are the things that I can do to take control of my personal information so that I am not a target to scammers and fraudsters? And before jumping into the presentation, I want to just give you like a few easy tips from our blog. So we do have a consumer privacy blog. We post monthly at least, sometimes more than that. So if you want to read our blog, it's on privacy.ca.gov. And Marissa will follow up with an email afterward with that in case you missed that URL. But here's a few tips, a few easy tips that you can do. One of them is to delete cookies. And you can do this by going into the browsing history of your browser, and there should be an option to delete cookies. And so a cookie is a file it's a small file that's stored on your web browser, and it can do a few different things. One of the things that it does is it remembers your passwords and your website history, which can be useful. But in some cases, there's cookies that can track you, track your information across websites. And businesses can use this to make inferences about your behavior online. So if you delete your cookies, that's one way where you can enhance your privacy a little bit. Another recommendation from the blog is to adjust your privacy settings. So that'll be also in your web browser. Look for the settings section. And depending on your browser, you may have a privacy section where you can adjust your settings. And some browsers are more privacy friendly than others. For example, Firefox is a really good privacy friendly browser. So is DuckDuckGo. So if you're looking for more privacy settings, those might be better options for you than, say, Google Chrome. You can also review privacy policies if you have the time. It is kind of a lot of work, but it's a good thing to do if you want to know that a business is following the law and respecting your privacy. So every website should have a privacy policy, and you should look for language in that privacy policy that refers to your privacy rights. And as a Californian, your privacy rights are granted to you through the California Consumer Privacy Act. And so when you're looking at a privacy policy, look for the language that specifically says California Consumer Privacy Act, because that means that they're recognizing our privacy law. And that's really important. And there should be other directions too in that privacy policy to help you exercise your rights, which I'll get to a little bit more in my presentation. Finally, you can use add-ons like ad blockers is one of them if you're really tech savvy. Again, it's in your browser settings. You can look for an ad blockers, and that will help block some advertising cookies and will actually stop some ads from showing up on your screen. And then there's another add-on that you can use. It's called an opt-out preference signal. I don't want to get too much into the weeds though yet. A couple more tips that I can give you that kind of lead off into the presentation. Great tips to protect your privacy is to know your privacy rights and how to exercise them. And that's where the rest of my presentation comes in. So before understanding or before knowing what your rights are and how to exercise your rights, it's important to know exactly what is personal information and what the difference is between personal information and sensitive personal information. And that leads me to the next slide here.
Okay, let me get 1 second. There we go.
Sure. Thanks, Strat. Personal information is essentially any information that can be used to identify you. So on the most basic level, it's your name, your email address, probably your home address, your purchase history, browsing history, your location data, from your phone. These are all anything that can potentially, identify you, where you work, your birthday. All of these things are personal information. Now, sensitive personal information is also a category of personal information, but you have some extra rights around sensitive personal information. Again, it's included in personal information, but sensitive personal information is, as the title would imply, it's a little bit more sensitive. And so the law defines sensitive personal information as identifying information. So that would be like your social security number or your driver's license, financial data. So your debit or credit card numbers, your bank number, your account number, precise geolocation. And when I say precise geolocation, that means within 1,850 feet. That's the exact amount that requires to be precise. So location data can be personal information, but precise geolocation would be sensitive personal information. A few other ones, your demographic or protected class information. So that's like your race, religion, ethnicity, biometric data, so your fingerprints, communications content. So that would be what you have in your mail, your email, your text messages. All of that's considered sensitive personal information. And finally, your health and sexual orientation. So that could be, your vaccine records or your health history. So all of that falls under sensitive personal information, and everything else is covered under the blanket of personal information. And that applies to your privacy rights, which I will get to now on the next slide here. So your California privacy rights, this is what I was referring to from the California Consumer Privacy Act. That can be summed up from this acronym. Hopefully it makes it a little bit easier for you to remember. And I'll go through each of these. So the acronym is LOCKED. The L, it stands for limiting the use of your sensitive personal information. So you have the right to limit the use of your sensitive personal information, as we went over in the last slide. You have the right to opt out of the sale and sharing of your personal information. So that's everything we went over in the last slide. You have the right to correct the information that businesses have collected about you. If they have incorrect information, you have the right to reach out and correct it. You have the right to know what information businesses have collected about you. If you send them a request, they have to give you categories of your personal information that they've collected. They have to tell you what types of entities they've shared it with and for what reason. The next one on here is the right to equal treatment. So businesses cannot discriminate against you for exercising your privacy rights. And finally, the big one is the right to delete. So you have the right to delete the information that businesses have collected about you. There are some small exceptions, but for the most part, this applies. And of course, all of these actually apply to businesses covered under the California Consumer Privacy Act, which there is a threshold. So a business has to make over, I don't have the exact number, but it's about an annual gross revenue of $25 million. So this doesn't necessarily apply to like really small businesses. This is, you know, the larger businesses that have the capacity to handle these requests. And so let me revisit some of these so you can have a better understanding. And I'll take them a little bit out of order so I can kind of explain how they work. So let's revisit the right to opt out of the sale and sharing of your personal information. So, you know, maybe you generally understand what that is, right? I mean, if you ask a business, hey, don't sell or share my information, you have the right to do that as a Californian. They have to stop, but you might be saying, well, how, you know, do I do that? How do I ask this business to stop selling and sharing my personal information? And that can you can submit that request in a few ways. So one of the ways is, and I'm sure you've all seen this at some point, if you go on a website, sometimes a little banner will pop up on the bottom of the screen, and that banner will have some options on it. And it'll usually have some radio buttons or a slider or a toggle. And I can't be too prescriptive about what you should do with that because each one of them looks kind of different. But if you look at it, you read the instructions, you can select your privacy rights right there. So you can tell them to opt out of the sale and sharing of your personal information. And a lot of times it gives you cookie options, which I talked about earlier. And you can actually select which type of cookies that you're okay with them using with you. Like I said, you know, sometimes cookies are functional, sometimes they're tracking, and sometimes they're advertising. This banner oftentimes will give you the choice to say, hey, I don't want tracking cookies, I don't want advertising cookies. Oh, but functional cookies are okay because you want the website to work. So that's one way you can do it. Like I said earlier with the privacy policy, that's another way you can do it. They should have instructions in their privacy policy on how to opt out of the sale and sharing of your personal information. And a lot of times too, if it's not in the banner, there might be a separate link at the bottom of their website that says my privacy choices, my California privacy choices, or something like please don't sell or share my personal information. So a few different options there, but just remember if you can't find the links and you can't find the banner, it should be in their privacy policy. And then that also applies to limiting the use of your sensitive personal information. And those two sound really familiar, so let me just unpack a little bit of what that means. So if you've opted out of the sale and sharing of your personal information, well, you've also opted out of the sale and sharing of your sensitive personal information, since that's a subset of personal information. So what you're essentially doing when you limit the use of your sensitive personal information, what you're telling that business is you cannot use my sensitive personal information for anything other than providing requested goods or services, ensuring security and integrity, preventing fraud, maintaining system functionality, and complying with legal obligations. So that means that if that business has sensitive personal information about you, they're not allowed to use it to create a consumer profile on you. They're not allowed to use it for marketing or advertising purposes, even internally within their own business. Because if you've already opted out of the sale and sharing of your personal information, they already can't share it externally. So when you limit your sensitive personal information, you're limiting what they can even do internally with it. The next two, I'll also take those in tandem because they go hand in hand in a way, and I'm going to flip flop those two. So we'll go over the right to know. So you have the right to know what information a business has collected about you, and you can request that information up to twice a year from a business free of charge. And so the right to know, this is how it applies. So when you have the right to know, you have the right to know the categories of specific pieces of personal information that they have about you. So if they have your email address, browsing history, location data, they have to tell you that. The categories of the sources of where they got the information. So how did they get this info? You may have given it to them through an interaction with the business, or they could have gotten it from social media or even a data broker. Their reason for collecting or selling or sharing information, they'd have to tell you if they're using your personal information just to provide you with services or maybe personalized advertising, market research. And they also have to share the types of entities that they've shared your information with. So it could be advertising firms, affiliated businesses, or even data brokers, which I know that Q touched on a little bit. And let me just define data brokers very quickly so that we have an understanding. So a data broker is a business that does not have a direct relationship with the consumer, but it trades and sells consumers' personal information. And you might be wondering, how does that happen? If I have not interacted with a business, how did they get my personal information? Well, sometimes they've collected it from a business that you have had an interaction with, which is where the right to know comes in handy. Other times they may have collected it from social media. They may have purchased it from another data broker. There's several ways they can get your information. But once one data broker has it, it can easily spread to other data brokers because they sell and trade and share information. So just to back up a little bit to the right to know, so you might get a report back from a business of all the personal information that they've collected about you, the types of businesses they've sold it to, and why they did it. And that may cause you to want to exercise your other privacy rights, right? If they're selling and sharing your information, that might cause you to say, hey, I want to opt out of this. So it's a really good way to kind of know, what a business is doing with your data. It also helps you exercise your right to correct. Once you know what a business has about you, what personal information they have collected from you, if you notice something that's wrong in there, you can correct that information. That can be really important to your identity. For example, they may have an incorrect last name, maybe even incorrect address, incorrect gender, and that could possibly result in the denial of services or some sort of identity mix-up, which nobody wants, right? So you have the right to correct your information. That business can't deny you to correct your information. So that's cool. And then finally, the last two, again, take them in tandem. I'll go over the right to delete first. So the right to delete your personal information. This one's somewhat self-explanatory, which is great. You would exercise this in a similar way for your right to opt out and right to limit. You'll go into the privacy policy and they should have instructions on there that'll give you instructions on how to exercise your right to delete. So if you contact a business that is covered by the California Consumer Privacy Act and you ask them to delete your personal information, they have to do it. There's another group that might have your personal information that you want to delete, which I just talked about, which is the data brokers. And so the California Privacy Protection Agency regulates data brokers. And in fact, if a data broker does business in California, they are legally required to register with our agency. And we published a data broker registry. It's on our website, privacy.ca.gov. It's under our resources tab, and you'll see a data broker registry there. And if you use that registry, you can find the names and contact information of all the data brokers who do business in California. And you can even contact those data brokers and ask them to delete your personal information. And they have to do it. And there's actually an Excel file on there. If you download the Excel file, you could take all of those emails, put them in one email and say, hey, please delete my personal information. The problem with that is that there's over 500 data brokers registered in the state of California. And so when you send out that email, you'll likely get 500 replies asking you to confirm. And we understand that's a lot of work. And so we have a solution for that to make that easier. We have Also solutions for your opt-out of sale or sharing information and limiting your sensitive personal information, because we know that these rights are, even if you understand them and you know how to exercise, sometimes it can be pretty arduous. And so one of the ways that you can make it a little bit easier on yourself is by using an opt-out preference signal. The opt-out preference signal will automatically select your privacy choices for you so that you don't have to go to every website that you visit and look for a link or look for a banner or read through the privacy policy to opt out of the sale and sharing of your personal information and to, opt out of certain cookies. So what this does, it's an add-on for your browser, and you can go on there and select your privacy choices. Say I want to opt out of the sale and sharing of my personal information, and I don't want tracking and advertising cookies. And you can set it that one time, and anywhere you go on the internet, it will broadcast that signal to that website. And the website, required by California law, if they do business in California, they have to honor your opt-out preference signal. And so that's a really good way to exercise your right to opt out of the sale and sharing of your personal information. And it's a really good way to manage what cookies that you're consuming. So the opt-out preference signal that I like to use, it's global privacy control. You can see the URL right there. So if you go to globalprivacycontrol.org, it will give you instructions on how to add this to your browser so that you can automatically select your privacy preferences no matter where you go. The other tool that will help you automate your privacy, and this one goes with the right to delete, is our platform coming out next year, and we're very excited about it. It's the first of its kind in the world. It's called the Delete Request and Opt-out Platform, and this goes with our data broker registry. So as I said, all data brokers are required to register with us. And what Drop will do, it's going to allow you to log in, create a profile, and then a single request, you can request the deletion of your personal information from every single data broker that's registered with us. So that kind of solves the problem of getting 500 emails back, right? Asking if you want to delete your personal information. And the really cool thing about this too is that it's continuous every 45 days. So you don't have to keep coming back to Drop every 45 days or every X amount of time to delete your information. You submit this request one time and it's a continuous 45-day deletion cycle. So that will really help you get your personal information out of the hands of data brokers if you so choose. And it's a good automated way to exercise your right to delete, at least when it comes to data brokers. And that is going to launch next year. It's coming out January 2026. That's kind of our soft launch. Data brokers will not actually start deleting information until August. But the sooner you get in there, you'll be first in line to get your information deleted. And so if you want information about how that's developing and how that's coming out, you can sign up for our announcements mailing list, which we will distribute the link to after this presentation. Finally, if you find that any of your privacy rights have been violated that I just discussed, you can submit a complaint with the California Privacy Protection Agency. And again, that's on our privacy website. URL is right there, privacy.ca.gov/complaints. And file a complaint with the agency, and we will look into it for you.
Wow, Bryce, that's a lot of real great information. Thank you very much for sharing that. One thing that has been a kind of a personal gripe of mine is just how complex the privacy languages are. When you go to a site and you read their privacy language, it's so complex. So it's great to know that all these features are coming out to keep us protected. I do want to ask, are there some ways that you're seeing or some behaviors that you're seeing that we do that typically gets us into trouble or gets us to expose our personal information that maybe we can try and avoid doing in the future?
Yeah, sure. So kind of like I alluded to in my presentation is most websites are actually tracking and collecting your data when you're browsing them. And so to reiterate, what I said during my presentation, using an opt-out preference signal is a great first step to make sure that your information isn't being tracked across multiple websites. So I highly encourage you to check that out. A couple other things. So identity theft risk would be, say, like clicking on an unknown link. That could be come across in a text message or an email. If you're unfamiliar with who is sending that to you, or even have a bad feeling about it, do not click on that link. A lot of times the link will either contain a virus, spyware, or will be a phishing attempt where a scammer is trying to take your personal information in some way. I know pretty recently there's a scam about Fast Track going around, which is our toll fee in the Bay Area if you don't live in Northern California. And it looked really legitimate. I actually almost fell for it one time because I did owe a toll, but I looked at it and took a second thought and said, you know what, I'm going to go on the actual Fast Track website and make this payment. That ended up being a good choice because I saw a video from Caltrans about a week later to avoid the scam. So always be vigilant. If it looks legitimate, you take the time to double check. And then one last one that I would say are public profiles. So your public social media profiles, those are big targets for data brokers. If it's a public social media profile, that means it's public information, and that means that data brokers will just scoop it right up and add it to their information and maybe creating a profile about you. So in order to stop that, I would encourage you to go into your social media settings and turn on your privacy settings. Make sure that only your friends and family can see what your posts are and your location is.
Oh, wow, that's actually a very interesting point. I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's go to some of our audience questions. If you do have a question, please post it in chat, and our guests, Bryce, as well as Nilofer and Hugh, will provide us some answers. I want to invite Sharon Miller on to come and maybe elaborate or tell us a little bit about her question around airport Wi-Fi. Sharon, are you on with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for being on. Please ask your question.
I'm going to be traveling soon, and I've heard that it's not a good idea to use the Wi-Fi at the airport. And I just want to know the do's and don'ts on that.
Thank you. Great question. Hugh, do you have kind of some suggestions and response for Sharon?
Yeah, Sharon, great question. And safe travels too. So if you're very concerned with it, I would avoid any open Wi-Fi. It's pretty, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's not difficult. I'll put it that way. It's not difficult for not just hackers, but also anyone who's very tech savvy to get onto those open Wi-Fi and be able to access or intercept those packets, right? So when you're sending internet signals out, it's just packets in the air, and it's really easy, especially over through like an open internet or Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi. It's really easy to intercept those. So if you're very concerned, I wouldn't use it. But if you absolutely need access to the internet, I would look into what's called a VPN, which is a virtual private network. They do get kind of expensive. And I don't have any particular recommendations, but what I would say is do your research, find the VPN that's right for you. And if you're only traveling for a short period of time, you could get some, like a 3-month subscription so that you'll be covered. Think of a VPN, and a quick explanation is think of it like so the internet is like a highway, right? Information highway, going back and forth. It's really easy for anyone on the highway to hit into each other. But if you get a VPN, it's kind of having your own private little highway on the internet highway. And in that private highway, you're a little more secure from having your information stolen. But I'm also curious if Bryce has any other suggestions.
No further suggestions from me. Thank you.
Thank you, current price. Sharon, my approach to it, if it requires a username and password, I would stay away from it when using public Wi-Fi. All right. Second person I'd like to invite on is, I just missed the question. Okay. Rabbi Rachel, are you on with us? How do I delete old accounts? Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? Are you on, Rabbi Rachel?
I believe I am on now. Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, and I can see you too. So we both have old email accounts that we don't use anymore. And I can recognize some spam when it's sent to the old email account that when I discontinued using it, I had it automatically forwarded. I cannot access that old email account. I just know when spam gets forwarded to my new account. How do you go and delete old accounts when you're lucky if you even remember whether it was Verizon or Outlook?
Bryce, any suggestions, any thoughts there?
Yeah, so just speaking from personal experience, I know that's hard. I've lost access to accounts too that I want to delete. What I would recommend doing, if the suffix essentially of the account. So if it's a Gmail account, if you know if it's a Yahoo or Hotmail or whatever it is, I would recommend reaching out to that company. For example, if it's a Gmail account, I would recommend going to Google, selecting contact us, and they should have some customer support there. It should say something along the lines of, I've lost access to my account. And if you open a ticket with them, I think they should be able to help you either delete that account or regain access to it. Do I have that right, Q?
Yeah, Bryce, you're absolutely correct. I would definitely go straight to the email platform and go through the process of trying to recover and get access to that account if possible. Um, some of the more active email platforms out there are actually putting inactive accounts to kind of a dormant mode, right? So I don't know what account it is. I'm in the same boat. I have an old AOL account which I'm still trying to get access to. Totally lost the email, the password, and I worry about it because I do have some back when I was a student, some information there. But luckily, they have not been a victim of a data breach yet. But yeah, just go straight to the email platform and try to get access.
Wonderful. Thank you both for that advice. And sorry to hear that, Rabbi Rachel. So let's go to Randy. Randy, you have a question about passkeys, and then we'll come to Chris K, who I see whose hand has been up for a while. So Randy, are you on with us? You have a question about using passkeys. Randy, care to ask your question? All right. We may not have Randy, in which case I'm not sure what her full question is, but she was, how about using passkeys when available? I guess maybe instead of maybe access to Wi-Fi or something like that. Q, would you like to weigh in on that? Any thoughts around that? And then
Yeah,
get to
sure.
Bryce.
Passkeys. So I'm assuming it's kind of like a PIN number of some sort. Some places offer those instead of having like a password. I always default to your better judgment. If you feel secure accessing your accounts using a passkey or even like password managers. I'm not a fan of it, but I do know a couple of very smart technology people who are big fans of password vaults and password managers. But I'm not familiar and I'm not comfortable with it, so I try to keep passwords in my own head. And again, I always default to your own personal better judgment and how much risk you're willing to accept.
Great. All right. Before I go to Chris Craig, Bryce, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah, I can just reiterate what Q said. I'm not super familiar with passkeys, but password managers is something that our agency recommends because for each account that you have, it should be a unique password and it should be hard to guess. It should be a combination of letters and numbers. And, hats off if you can remember all that. But personally, I need a password manager to keep all of those in line. And the way that that works is you have one master password for your password manager, and then your password manager can then generate really strong passwords for any account that you might have. And so then all of your accounts will have different passwords, but you'll only really have to remember the one password to log into the password manager.
Yeah, yeah. It's important, but it is a challenge trying to remember all the passwords. And also, you constantly have to update them, right? All right. Chris K, I see your hand is up. Please come on and ask your question.
Thank you. I have one incident happened, and with that, I have two questions. The incident was I lost my billfold containing driver's license, credit cards, and some information, mostly credit cards, health insurance, and my driver's license. And I reported to the local police loss of it, but in the my back of my mind, and they never found it. So back of my mind is that who might be using it, whomever picked up my billfold and using that information. Where else do I have to report the loss? That was the first question. Second question is that currently, then should I separate my driver's license from credit cards separately in the different billfolds? Thank you.
Thank you for, sorry to hear what happened to you, and thank you for being with us on that question. Hugh, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, a moment of vulnerability here too. I actually had my wallet stolen, and it was pretty recent. It was a couple of months ago, and I'm in the same boat. So I'll kind of answer the last question first, and then kind of work my way through. What I have learned, my mistake here was I had everything in my wallet, everything: driver's license, social security card, credit cards, everything. My military ID, a really old one, I had it all in there. Photos, everything. And when I had to go contact every single financial institution, I even went to my healthcare company to let them know, hey, someone has my healthcare card, right? Make sure that someone's not going to a healthcare facility trying to use my card to pay for services or urgent care, that kind of thing. So it is very devastating. And what I've learned is that I have two wallets. I have one which I carry the bare essential, which is like my driver's license, a debit card, and a credit card, and that is it. It's the bare essentials I need, and a little bit of cash, and it's to go out and do whatever I need to do task wise. And then I have another wallet which I have everything else in, and that's if I'm traveling and I need multiple forms of identity or access to all my other financial accounts, or healthcare accounts, that kind of thing. I have all that. So that's kind of how my strategy behind it. So that again, if I lose just my quick travel wallet, I'm okay. I don't need to do too much. The second part of the question you said is, what else do you need to do? What I did immediately was contact all my I did a quick inventory in my head about what did I have in my wallet, and I had to contact everyone: credit card companies, bank companies, again, healthcare membership companies. Right, I have a membership to a couple of different organizations. I had to let them know, hey, I lost my ID. Can you issue me a new one? The old one's invalid. I lost my driver's license, as well as my social security card, which it's incredibly terrible. So I had to notify, of course, Social Security Administration, and then as well as the DMV to get a new card. And then I also went to the IRS to get what's called an identity protection pin. It's free. It's easy to do. You do have to authenticate who you are, but that way someone cannot file a tax return posing as you, right? So without that pin, they cannot submit a tax return. And so that kind of puts a stop to that. So and police report was the right thing to do. The police officer who worked with me was very nice. He was very professional, and he said, hey, listen, a stolen wallet is not a priority of ours. We're going to do the best we can to try to find it. And that was 4 months ago. Haven't heard anything back. But he gave me a lot of great tips on how to recover. And if you go to identitytheft.gov, it's a website hosted by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. You could actually go down the checklist. If you could remember everything that was in your billfold or your wallet, you could just go down the checklist, and it'll give you suggestions of where else can you go to contact financial institutions and try to recover. So yeah, again, it's bad to. I'm sorry to hear that this happened to you, and I hope that you're recovering.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate you being with us, Chris, and great responses. Bryce, I think I have a question here from you. I'm going to invite Leslie to come on. Leslie, I hope you're still with us. She's got a question about deleting cookies. Leslie, are you on?
I'm still here. Can you
Thank you,
hear me?
Leslie.
Good. Yeah, so I really just wanted to know, I know literally how to delete cookies only because I was dealing with an IT person the other day who suggested it. But I don't have a sense of when you say to delete them, I think about my cookies approximately never. So is that something I should do once a month, once a year? Should I put it on my calendar? What would you suggest?
That is a good question. I don't have exact guidance for a timeline of how often you should delete your cookies. Um, if I had to make a personal recommendation, I would say once a month. But what I would encourage you to do is use an opt-out preference signal. And in that way, when you go to these different websites, you're automatically telling the websites, hey, I don't want advertising cookies and I don't want tracking cookies, because there are certain cookies that you probably want on your computer. For example, you might want the cookies that remember your passwords. And so the most effective way to protect yourself from tracking cookies would be using an opt-out preference signal.
Yeah, I'll add one thing there, and Bryce, that's great advice. I would say for me, and again, it depends on how much you browse the web, the internet. But what I do is I just add it to one of my monthly tasks. So I budget monthly, and I also check my financial accounts monthly. And so it's just one of those extra tasks I do that I just delete my browser cookies. And then, of course, I have changing my passwords regularly as well as one of those tasks that I have, and just make it a habit.
Wonderful. Speaking of cookies, and you may have just touched on it, but Sharon also had a question about whether deleting cookies, does that also delete passwords? And then will that be difficult to recover? So if you want to just elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. Yeah, I can elaborate it. So yeah, if you delete your cookies, it might delete your passwords from like the remember. So sometimes on a website when you log in, there's a little box there that says "Remember Me," and so when you check that "Remember Me" box, it's remembering your password by using a cookie. But there's other ways that you can have your computer remember your passwords without a cookie. For example, a lot of web browsers have a built-in password manager. I know Google Chrome has one. When I use it, it'll say, hey, do you want to remember this password when you type it in? And that's in the box in your upper right-hand corner. And those passwords are stored in a password manager, a built-in one for Chrome. You may also want a separate password manager, which we talked about later. And so in either of, or earlier, sorry, but in either of those cases, if you deleted your cookies, yes, it would delete your password from that website's memory of it, as in the little checkbox that says remember me, but it wouldn't delete it from a browser password manager or a separate software application software manager. So you would still have access to the password if you have it stored somewhere else. But if you only have it stored in that cookie for the remember me checkbox and you delete that cookie, then yes, you may have to go through a password recovery process.
Thank you very much, folks. We are at 1 o'clock. I do want to thank my guests of Hugh Lee with the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation for spending your time with us today, answering the questions, as well as Bryce Alvarez with the California Privacy Protection Agency, as well as Nilofer Sheikh for being with us and answering our questions and giving us really some great advice. Following this presentation today, you will receive an email with all the wonderful resources, websites, and links that they mentioned today, where you can reach out to their agencies for any type of assistance and information. I also want to thank my colleague who behind the scene, Marissa, for helping us manage the today's event. I hope you will join us next week as we delve into identity theft. I'm sorry, not identity theft, imposter scams. Join our Scam Chat Wednesday series next week, and we'll have another great conversation and look to answer your questions. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I wish you a good rest of your day. Goodbye.